Once upon a time, in a distant village named Agassi, lived a beautiful little girl named Omi. Omi was 10 years old, had bright sparkling eye that always shone with wisdom. Her parents had 4 children, and she was the second. They weren't rich, but they always managed to put food on their table. Omi was a happy child. She loved playing with her brothers and sisters. She also loved it when it was story time. Under the moonlit sky, Baba Chidi, a tall towering man, would gather the children in the neighborhood and tell them moonlight tales. Then one day, their grandmother visited. "I would like to take Omi with me, you know how lonely it gets. And my legs are not what they used to be. Mama, you know you can always take her with you. I'll be coming to see the both of you from time to time." Omi felt sad. She doesn't want to leave her parents or siblings. But it was decided already. She was going to stay with her grandmother in her grandmother's village, and they would leave in 2 days. When the day arrived, Omi waved goodbye to her parents, sisters and brothers. With a little excitement, she carried her bag and followed her grandmother. When they got to the village, Omi saw that it was bigger than the one she had come from, and she was thrilled. Being in her grandmother's house wasn't easy. She had to wake up very early, wash and prepare baking pans, as her grandmother baked bread. She would also have to go hawking every day. Then grandmother's friend, Mama Ibiden, visited one day. "My daughter in the city needs a little girl that could stay with her and help her around the house. What do you think about Omi going to the city? My daughter would put her in school and give her a better life." "Well, you know I'm only her grandmother. I need to talk to her parents about it first, then I will let you know their decision by tomorrow." The next morning, Omi's grandmother sent a messenger to her parents in Agassi, explaining Mama Ibiden's offer. Omi's mother was hesitant. Her little girl had only just left home. But her father, after much thought, said, "If it means she will get a better life, then we must consider it." 2 days later, the reply came. Omi's parents had agreed. She would go to the city. Omi had mixed feelings. She had only just begun adjusting to her grandmother's village, and now she was leaving again. But the thought of going to the city excited her. She had heard many stories about the bright lights, the tall buildings, and the endless opportunities. Early the next morning, Omi packed her small bag once again. Grandmother gave her some food for the journey, and Mama Ibiden led her to the waiting vehicle. "Be a good girl," Grandmother said, holding her tightly. "Work hard and remember where you come from." With that, Omi set off on a new adventure, one that would change her life forever. She was filled with excitement as the vehicle sped toward the city. She imagined a beautiful house, delicious food, and maybe even toys like the ones she had heard about. When they arrived, she was in awe. Tall buildings touched the sky, and the streets were busy with people rushing about. Mama Ibiden's daughter, Madame Lara, lived in a big house. Omi thought she would be treated kindly, just as Mama Ibiden had promised. But she was wrong. From the very first day, Omi was put to work. She had to wake up before dawn to sweep, fetch water, and wash clothes. She cooked meals but was only given little food to eat. If she made a mistake, Madame Lara would shout at her or sometimes even hit her. "I brought you here to work, not to play." Madame Lara would snap whenever Omi tried to rest. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Omi never saw the inside of a classroom, even though she had been promised an education. She longed to go back to her parents, to her grandmother, to the nights of storytelling under the moon. One evening, after being punished for breaking a plate, Omi sat alone in the small room where she slept. Tears streamed down her face. "I want to go home," she whispered. But she knew that unless someone rescued her, she was trapped. Omi was treated like a slave. She was ordered to only eat in the kitchen. Madame Lara had a special plastic plate and spoon. Omi wasn't allowed to go into the living room, talk less of watching television, can your useless and poverty-stricken parents afford a television? Madame Laura would say. One afternoon, as Omi washed a pile of dirty clothes in the backyard, her small hands aching from scrubbing, a kind neighbor named Auntie Busy walked by. She had noticed Omi many times, how frail and exhausted she looked, how she was always working while Madame Lara's own children played inside. "My dear, are you okay?" Auntie Busy asked gently. Tears welled up in Omi's eyes as she whispered, "I want to go home." Auntie Busy knelt beside her, gently touching her shoulder. "Have you told anyone?" Omi shook her head. "Madame Laura says I should be grateful, but she beats me, and she doesn't let me go to school." Auntie Busy felt a surge of anger. This was not right. That evening, she confronted Madame Laura. "Why do you treat this girl this way?" Madame Laura scoffed. "She is fine. She just needs to work hard. You should mind your business, Busy." But Auntie Busy was determined. She knew Omi needed help. The next day, she went to visit Mama Ibiden. When she told her everything, Mama Ibiden gasped in shock. "This is not what I promised her family," she said, shaking her head in shame. When Omi's grandmother heard what had been happening, she was furious. Without wasting time, she sent a message to Omi's parents in Agassi. Her father was outraged. "My daughter is suffering while we thought she was being cared for," he growled. "I must go and bring her home myself." That very night, Omi's father took the first available transport to the city. He arrived early in the morning, his heart pounding as he approached Madame Lara's house. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, she forced a smile. "Oh, Baba Omi. What a surprise." But his eyes were cold. "I am taking my daughter home," he said, his voice calm but firm. Madame Lara opened her mouth to argue, but one look at him silenced her. She turned and called for Omi. When Omi saw her father standing at the door, she froze. Was she dreaming? "Papa," she whispered. Her father's face softened as he stretched out his arms. "Come, my child. We are going home." Omi burst into tears as she ran into his embrace. The warmth of his arms reminded her of all she had missed, the love of her family, the safety of home. Madame Lara sighed and waved her hand dismissively. "Take her. She was too lazy anyway." But Omi's father didn't reply. He simply picked up her small bag, took her by the hand, and walked out of the house. The journey back to Agassi felt like the longest one ever, but for Omi, every mile was a step closer to happiness. As they reached their village, she saw familiar trees swaying in the breeze, the dusty roads where she used to play with her siblings. Then, she saw them, her mother, her brothers, and her sisters standing outside their home, waiting. "Mama," she cried, running toward them. Her mother caught her in a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. "My child, my precious child." Her siblings gathered around, hugging her, touching her, as if to make sure she was really there. That night, as she lay on her mat under the moonlit sky, listening to Baba Chidi tell his stories, she felt a peace she hadn't known in so long. She was finally home. She was finally safe. She was finally free. Hello everyone, Omi's story shows that every child has potential, regardless of their family, race, or status. Encouraging and supporting them can shape their future positively. Thank you so much for watching. Please share your thoughts about this story in the comment section. Also don't forget to like and share to others, this helps grow our channel.